Okay, let's jump right in. We're about to explore a really fascinating and honestly kind of unexpected link between the autistic experience and a core idea from ancient Buddhist philosophy. We're going to see how a modern way of experiencing the world might just give us a direct line into an age-old question. What in the world is the self?
So here's the big question that kicks this whole thing off. Could the unique way the autistic mind works actually hold a key to understanding this philosophical idea of no self? It's a pretty big thought, so let's unpack it together. All right, so first things first, we've got to get our heads around two totally different ways of thinking about identity. Over on the left, you have the stable self. This is the common Western idea, right? That there's a single, solid I that's the same person you were yesterday and will be tomorrow. But on the right, you've got the process self, this idea that identity is actually fluid, always changing. And for a lot of autistic people, that second one feels way more true to life. And you know what? That process self idea lines up almost perfectly with this core Buddhist concept called anatta, which translates to no self. Now, it's super important to get this right. No self doesn't mean you literally don't exist. Not at all. It means the self isn't some fixed, permanent thing. It's more like a river, a dynamic process that's always flowing and changing. So how in the world does the autistic experience link up with a philosophy that's like 2,500 years old? Well, our first clue is all about the incredible power of intense focus. This often boils down to a trait called monotropism. Basically, it's a way of paying attention where you zero in really intensely on just a couple of things, instead of kind of spreading your attention all over the place. And this is where it gets really interesting. When someone is in that state of hyperfocus, totally absorbed in something they love, that feeling of being a separate me, the I who is doing the thing, it can just dissolve. The person and the activity just become one and the same. It's like, in those moments, the self stops being a thing, a noun, and it becomes a doing, a verb. It is the active process of being completely engaged. That's a lived, in-the-moment experience of anatta. Okay, so that's the internal world. But what happens when we look at the external, social world? Turns out that gives us another huge piece of the puzzle about why the self can feel so, well, flexible. A lot of autistic people have to do this thing called masking, and it is a conscious effort. It can be absolutely exhausting, actually. It's all about performing social behaviors that are considered typical just to fit in and meet the demands of a neurotypical world. And look, this isn't accidental. It's a very deliberate process. You're observing social cues, you're actively holding back your natural reactions, and then you're performing a whole persona that you think is expected. It really shows how a self can be built, piece by piece, for any given situation. So you can imagine, right, if you're constantly and consciously shifting who you are to fit in, that whole idea of a single true self starts to feel pretty shaky. You learn from direct experience that the self is a process, something that changes and adapts to its environment. All right, so we've seen how focus can make the self disappear and how social pressures can force you to build different selves. The final piece of this puzzle takes us back inside, to the raw logic of what it feels like to just be. Because for a lot of autistic people, the inner world is just so dynamic, so full of change, that the whole idea of a static, unchanging me it doesn't make sense. From a logical standpoint, it feels impossible. And why is that? Well, think about it. The internal experience can be this constant ebb and flow of overwhelming sensory input, really intense emotional states. It's a direct, moment-by-moment awareness of how temporary everything, every thought, every feeling really is. So when your lived reality is all about constant change, a philosophy that comes along and says, hey, by the way, everything is temporary, including you, well, that doesn't sound like some weird abstract theory. It sounds like someone is just describing what you already know to be true. So let's bring it all together. You've got intense focus, you've got the performance of self, you've got that internal flux. What are we really looking at here? It's this incredible synthesis of a particular kind of mind and a very old philosophy. It seems like several common autistic traits, that logical way of thinking, that ability to get completely immersed in something, that direct experiential grasp of impermanence, they all kind of create a natural on-ramp to these ancient Buddhist insights. And what this does is completely reframe how we look at these traits. We stop seeing them as deficits or obstacles. Instead, we see them as a unique and really powerful lens for understanding the world, a different way of seeing that might actually offer a clearer picture of what the self truly is. So, we're going to leave you with a final thought to chew on. If we really take this idea seriously, that the self isn't something we have, but a process we're constantly doing, then the question isn't, who are you? The real question is, what are you right now in the process of becoming?